cat out.
Getting a fair
Poor
number of
kitty.
participants showing up.
Oh, man.
And
Hey, everybody.
Hello, Matilda.
Hi.
Ah, there's Matilda.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Matilda.
I decided to just come home from my meetings rather than try to deal with things in the restaurant office when the phone is ringing off the hook. So,
I think it's 4 o'clock.
It is. It is.
mhm.
Is Gabe with us today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can we have a roll call, please? Or call the meeting to order today on March 22nd, 2021. Can we get a roll call vote, please? Roll call, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I do that, though, is the meeting being recorded currently?
Matt,
There we go.
I think he's taking it off right now.
Now it is.
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mayor Alex Johnson, second.
Here,
Councilors Olson,
Here.
Novak,
Here.
Bartholomew,
Here.
Kopczynski,
Here.
Bessie Johnson,
Here.
and Smith.
Here.
All
thank you,
members
Joe.
present.
Thank you, Gabe. I appreciate it. I received an email that said there's no business from the public that was turned in this afternoon before noon. And so, did you have anything, City Manager, that you want to talk about right now, or do you want to wait to the end of the meeting?
No, I have nothing for you at this point.
So we're going to go ahead and next agenda item is ratify appointment of Robin Davis to the Human Relations Commission and Community Development Commission on pages 2 and 4.
I move that we ratify the appointment of the commission.
Second.
Second.
Do we have a second? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. We're all past 6-0. Next thing is discussion of city services fee options. Peter Trochin, Sean Kidd, and Gina Yeager will be discussing that on page 5 and 6. Actually, right now, the action request is information, discussion, and direction. So I'll turn it over to Peter Trochin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a small correction. It's not Sean Kidd, who's our attorney, very capable attorney, but it's Sean Park, who's a project manager for.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so we need to correct that in the minutes then.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. We have the opportunity today to hear from Deb Gallardi of Gallardi Rothstein Group about the city services fee that's being built for the city. To provide some context for our session this afternoon, however, I'd like to take a few short minutes to make 3 distinct points about where we are. First of all, the current biennium, the biennium that we are in right now, ends on June 30th. We are well into the development of the budget for the next biennium, and work sessions for the budget committee are on your calendar. The second point is that we are also well into the design of this city services fee. And the primary purpose for our agenda item this afternoon is to hear from Deb Gallardi, our consultant, on her progress and what options you have in front of you and what decisions you'll need to make before we go further. And then third, we know, you have heard, that we'll be receiving $9.37 million in what we call now ARPA funds, or American Rescue Plan Act. That's money that will come to Albany as a result of the passage of that act. And that's something that we found out about last week. Again, although the primary purpose of the work session this evening is to hear about the city services fee, all 3 of these factors are at play. So before I ask Deb to begin her presentation, please let me speak a little to ARPA. As we currently understand it, ARPA funds may be used to respond to negative economic impacts of COVID-19, including assistance to households, small businesses and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. They can be used to provide government services, to the extent of the reduction in revenue. In other words, if we lost revenue due to parks fees not being able to be charged, we could recover that revenue up to the baseline of what that budgeted amount was in 2019. We can make investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And we can include premium pay for eligible workers performing essential work as determined by each state, in this case, the state of Oregon during the pandemic. And we can transfer funds to a private nonprofit organization, a public benefit corporation involved in transportation of passengers or cargo, or a special purpose unit of the state or local government. We are going to hear tomorrow, or I'm sorry, on Wednesday from ICMA about developing information about this source of funds. And we want to look at ways in which these funds can be used to lessen the negative impacts felt by local businesses, families, and citizens, and help them to recover from the impact of COVID-19 and the economic catastrophe that resulted from the pandemic and associated closures. The city government has certainly lost revenue due to the pandemic, in parks and recreation and in transit lodging taxes especially, but we don't have a sales tax. Unlike so many other cities around the country, we did not suffer an immediate drop in operating revenues in other parts of our general fund. Our community, however, did suffer, and we will hopefully be able to use many of these funds to help with economic recovery. The funds will have restrictions governing their use, and we'll learn more about the restrictions, as I mentioned this week. The National League of Cities notes in the Friday phone call that we have every Friday. Last Friday, they noted that they don't expect solid guidance from the US Treasury Department for the next 30 to 60 days. Nevertheless, it's a great source of assistance, and we'll be able to use it to help the community in the ways enumerated above. But I want to point out that it is one-time money. Like the funds the city received from the settlement with Pepsi 12 or 15 years ago, these funds are coming to us once. They won't come again. As such, even if the rules allowed it, the funds should not be used to plug holes in the budget. This would potentially make the budget problems worse in the long run. The budgetary problem, as we've talked about for several years, is a property tax structural problem. It was not caused by the pandemic. Although in certain areas, as we mentioned, in parks and recreation and those functions funded by TLT, the pandemic did exacerbate the problem. The problem has been identified for years. In July of last year, and then again in October, I presented to the council on expected reductions in service levels in the next biennium. These estimates were based on department directors' appraisals of cuts that would have to be made if revenues could not grow sufficiently to support the cost of services. Since then, we've heard from directors at the council retreat, and you have a good picture of what reductions will have to happen. Again, the problem is a structural problem. In other words, the structure is set up to ensure that revenues from property taxes are limited in growth, while state and federal mandates and demands for services are not similarly limited. This guarantees that unless we find other revenue, the only option available to us is to cut expenditures. We constantly look for ways to keep costs down, but we're talking about reductions in costs that go well beyond the margins. This means that we have to cut muscle and bone, not fat. This is the reduction of service levels. And this is why you will need this vehicle that's being built for you. So with that, let me now turn to Deb and ask her to make her presentation, and we'll have a chance to ask her questions and have some discussion afterwards. So Deb, over to you, please.
Good afternoon. I am going to share my screen. Let's see. presentation mode. So tell me, are you seeing a title page or a page with some boxes and a figure?
The latter.
Both.
Okay.
Punching both.
Seeing your
Oh.
presenter view.
Okay.
You
I'm
want
going to try to
to
change that this time.
go under display settings there at the top.
Yep, I see it.
Pop that down
Swap.
and yep.
How's that look?
You need left scroll, control scroll out and make it smaller.
Yeah, it's like zoomed in.
Oh, zoomed in. Okay. Meaning that, well, let's see. So if I go to this first content slide, you're seeing very small.
Huge.
Very large.
Very large. Oh,
Hold down control and scroll out.
okay. That's a new one. Let's see. How can we make this? So is that in display settings too, do you think?
I would just go to your keyboard and hold down control and scroll out with your wheel on your mouse.
Oh, okay. Let's try that.
Or alternatively, maybe try stopping sharing and then restarting it.
Okay.
Now that you've swapped those displays.
Okay. So stop. It may just be that the, let me just try to shrink this down a little bit in the display settings. Because it may be that it's, let's try that. Okay. Share again. Is that any better?
It defaulted back to presenter mode.
Oh, so I've got to go. Okay. So I just have to do that same swap again.
Yeah, but it's also cut off too.
No. Oh, there we are.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Oh,
Good here.
excellent. Okay. All right. Sorry about it's always challenging technology. Okay, so this afternoon, I wanted to, as Peter said, update you on where we are on the technical analysis. And the last time that I presented to you, we had just completed the case study research, looking at what other local governments are charging and how they're charging for these types of fees. And we were also evaluating your own billing and customer data to see what structures you could support under your current billing system information. So from that, we identified some different options to consider, and we've developed those, and I will be presenting you actual numbers for some preliminary options to illustrate for you how different types of customers would be impacted under these different rate scenarios and what potential revenue overall the city could receive at different at these fee levels, making assumptions about how you would potentially charge different types of customers and also providing things like low income discount. So I'll also share that in the context of the fee levels of the other cities that we reviewed, so you could see where how you would compare in those other fees. Still to come would be fully developing an implementation plan. The technical analysis is part of that, but then to actually implement the fee, you've got to make changes to your billing system, make sure you have a full set of policies and procedures about how you would be carrying out, implementing the fee, and then of course, very importantly, the customer outreach. As we talked about at the last meeting, part of this is technical, part of it is policy. There's not just one right way to do this. And so there are three overall areas where there are policy decisions to be made. First is in the rate structure what is the basis for the charge? Are we assessing the fee based on accounts or the number of units? So when I talk about units, I'm talking about, for example, a multifamily structure with 20 units. It would be charged under a unit basis for each individual unit. Another option is water meters, which are, you have different sizes of water meters serving different types of customers. So that's another potential basis, and provides a way to scale the fees to potentially recognize the impacts of larger customers. Then within the rate structure and the fee level, also, there are decisions to be made about whether you charge uniformly, whether it be on a unit or an account or a meter basis, or whether the fee varies based on the class of customers. So for example, as a single family dwelling unit, do I pay the same as a multifamily dwelling unit? Or does the multifamily dwelling unit pay less because generally multifamily customers or dwelling units have fewer people per unit? And conversely, commercial customers can have there's a wide range of sizes of commercial customers, but on average, going to have more people in terms of employees and customers frequenting the business. So structure is an important decision, how we charge, and then the fee level. For a basic single family dwelling unit, what fee level, and then if we're doing differential fees, how much to charge above or below that for the other customer classes. And of course, we've talked about before, providing low income discounts. If so, how much would you discount? What other exemptions and billing practices? Within the universe of options for rate structures, we can be very simple, and we can, charging everybody basically the same, which would mean a uniform dollars per month, no matter what type of customer you are, and just on an account basis. As we move to the right here, we're getting more complex, but we're also adding potentially enhanced equity or fairness in that we are scaling the fees to recognize additional people generally, but also, size of structure, things that could be related to the services that are received. So the next set of bars here in this chart look at moving from an account basis to a unit basis. So as I said, that would mean charging each multifamily dwelling unit would have a charge, each commercial unit. And commercial units are generally things like hotels, motels that have multiple rooms. So you might be noted as each individual unit. It can also mean a customer that has multiple structures in terms of a business or an institutional customer. So going from accounts to units, and then the decision to have a variable charge for the number of units or the customer class. So charging more potentially to commercial, less to multifamily on a per unit basis. The next variable that we can use to scale the fees is the water meter and the size of the water meter. Some of your utility water wastewater fees do increase with the size of the meter. Generally means larger customer in terms of people and potentially product and things like that. So water meter size can be a basis for assessing the fees. And then we can do hybrid combination approaches. So two that we'll be presenting to you look at using dwelling units as a basis for charging residential customers, but scaling commercial and industrial either on the basis of the water meter and the water meter size, or on the number of units within the commercial industrial for multi-unit customers, and the size of the commercial industrial account as estimated by impervious area, because that is something that the city already tracks for the purposes of assessing stormwater rates. So the size of your, like the water meter, generally, if you have more impervious area, you're going to be a larger building that can house more people, customers, etc. So a number of different options, obviously getting more complex as we look at different ways to charge and variables and having tiers within customer classes. However, the objective is that as you add complexity, you add fairness as well. But the balance point, that's part of what counts, an important decision that council needs to make about how best to balance different objectives. So first, to just give you an idea of what others are charging just generally in terms of the fee levels, but also you can see in this table that there are some differences in how these fees are applied, in that some cities like Medford, for example, will have multiple different fees that are specific to a service, like a separate parks fee and then public safety fees, and have those as individual fees. Others like Gresham and Salem, for example, have a single fee that covers multiple services. And in the case of Gresham, it's for police, fire, parks. Salem, it applies to public safety, parks, libraries. And Corvallis also has separate parks and public safety fees. And the public safety fees in Corvallis, actually, I've combined them here, but they're two separate fees, one for police and one for fire. So you can see that there are some different practices used by the different cities that were part of our focused research. In terms of the range of fees, you can see that here for a residential customer, there's a low of $4.50, and these are per month per single family customer. For $4.50 a month is the lowest fee, and the highest fee of this group of customers is $15 a month. The average comes out to be about $10, and the median is about $8. And you can see we've selected, for purposes of illustration to you, of different fee impacts and different revenue, that a residential fee of $9. So right in the middle of that sort of median average of these different communities. And for commercial, I included some information here just so you can see that a number of these communities do charge more for a commercial customer than they do for a residential customer. So Salem, for example, which charges based on, it does a combination of, it applies the $8 per month for a single family dwelling unit, but it charges a commercial account $38.56. So a pretty significant increase if you are a commercial customer. Sandy, City of Sandy, also does similarly. They're dealing with a much, with a lower fee for the residential, and but they've also kept the commercial fee quite a bit lower. Others in this comparison, Corvallis, for example, and Newburgh, charge based on the water meter size. So there's a range of fees. And so in Corvallis, a commercial customer could pay basically about the same as a residential customer, or over $2,000 per month for the largest meter size. I will note that at least one community, Kaiser, does have a low income discount that they provide also. And the options that we have developed for you all include some assumed discount for residential, for low income resident. I've used 25% discount for purposes of illustration, but again, that's a policy decision that council can give us some feedback on. So we didn't want to overwhelm you with too many options, but we wanted to show you, give you enough of a range so you can see the potential impacts and revenue associated with these different options. So the first, we chose to start on that continuum of simple to complex, kind of in the third area. We didn't want to start at the simplest because we didn't think it was met the objective of being fair and equitable. So all the options for residential look on a assess the fee on a per unit basis. So multifamily would pay per unit, and residential single family would pay per unit, but the fee varies by class. And so a multifamily would pay 80% of what a single family rate would be. And that's the case in all of these options, except for option 2, which would, for multifamily, vary the fee by meter size. So a multifamily customer, just like commercial industrial, would, if they have a 1-inch meter, would pay a lower rate than they would if they had a 4-inch meter that served many units. For the options 3 and 4, they're a combination of options where the residential are based on dwelling units, and then we use 2 different scaling measures for commercial and industrial. Option 3 uses the meter size, and option 4 uses the tiers based on impervious area. So if you're basically have impervious area that is put you about the same size as a single family customer, you would be charged like a single family customer. But if you're a commercial industrial with larger impervious area, then you're going to be placed in one of 2 larger tiers. So 4 options. All of the options start with, assume a $9 per month single family residential fee per dwelling unit. Again, that was selected based on looking at that comparative information. And in this case, where we have the variable rate per unit and rates by class, that is estimated to generate about $2.7 million over the year. So as I said, the low income is discounted 25%. The multifamily residential per unit is discounted 20%. Those fee levels can be changed and the differentials can be modified. If you're a multi-unit commercial industrial customer, again, that's things like most commonly like hotels, motels, then you're going to pay per unit based on the single family, and it's just going to, your bill is going to be scaled up for based on the number of units. If you're not a multi-unit commercial industrial, you're going to pay a flat rate per account, and what we've set that at for purposes of this illustration is 2 times the rate of the single family, which would be $18 per account per month. Option 2 is based on the meter size for multifamily, commercial, and industrial. So you can see single family, again, just pays the $9 per dwelling unit per month. Low income discounted at 25%. Everybody else pays according to a meter schedule, which varies based on the capacity of the meter. And so that range from going from a 3/4 inch to a 10-inch meter would be $9 up to almost $1,900. So similar to Corvallis, for the very largest meters, you're going to have a significantly larger rate. Most of your customers are going to be 2-inch and below, but you're going to have some large customers that are commercial, industrial, that are paying, some of these 3, 4, 6-inch meters. And that based on, so this is estimated to be about 2.5 million. And the reason that this is lower is because when you go to charging multifamily based on a meter size instead of number of units, you basically drop in revenue because they have, you can serve a lot of units of a multifamily development with a smaller meter sizes. So you don't, you would be recovering much less from multifamily as a whole. Option 3 is the combination of residential rate per dwelling unit. And this time we're including multifamily like we did in option 1. And then commercial industrial is charged based on the meter size, except for the multi-unit. So we've assumed the multi-unit, like hotel, motel, would pay the $9 per month per unit, and everybody else would pay based on the meter size. And that is estimated to generate 2.8 million. So slightly more than option 1. And because option 1 just assumed a flat rate per for commercial, this is obviously going to recover more from commercial industrial because we're charging based on the much higher rate as we go up in meter size. Last but not least is option 4, which same as the other option for residential. And this time for commercial industrial, we have taken a look at each of the distribution of commercial and industrial customers and their impervious area and come up with 3 different tiers. The first tier would be everybody that has 3,200 square feet and below in terms of impervious area. That's how you define an equivalent dwelling unit for stormwater rates. And so those customers would be charged just like a single family residential customer. And then we've established a large upper tier of tier 3, which would apply for customers with 50,000 square feet or more. And then everybody in between would fall in this tier 2. And the pricing is basically, we've priced the top tier similar to what Salem did at $38. The tier 2 is just double the single family and the small equivalent dwelling unit rate in that case. And this option is estimated to generate about 2.7 million. So all of the options, there's a lot of numbers on this table. I apologize for that, but want to give you a sense as to how you can see side by side the overall revenue at the very bottom of the table from 2.5 to 2.8 million. And then we can look at how the rate structure and in particular, how the decision about the rate structure really can impact different types of customers. Not so for residential single family. All customers pay the same under all the options because they all assume that you're going to assess a flat charge per dwelling unit. Low income, the only, the policy decision there is how much of a discount, but in all cases, we've applied the 25% for illustration. For multifamily, a big difference in, as I said, if you charge based on the number of units, a multifamily customer is going to pay a lot more if you're charging based on units and than if you are on meter size. So, and that's because you can serve a lot of units within a given size of meter. So this example here, you see that the for a 3/4 inch meter, which is the smallest meter size, and in this example, it just served 2 units, and options 1, 3, and 4, that customer is going to pay $14.40 total. This is total. This is not per unit. And in option 2, they're going to pay $9 because they would have the same meter size as a single family residential with a 3/4 inch meter. If we're charging based on units for the large complex, which has 155 units, you can see that that charge per month is going to be over 1,000. And if we're charging based on the meter size, a significantly lower fee of $450. So this decision about units versus meter sizes is pretty significant in terms of how the impacts are felt by multifamily. It is by far the more common to charge multifamily on a per unit basis than it is based on meter size. Though there's a couple examples, being Corvallis and Newburgh being of the 6 that we looked at that charge on that basis. But it's more common to charge based on the number of units because that really is a direct has a direct relationship with the potential service received based on the number of people in those units. For industrial, you can see here that the 2 sample customers have, they're both single unit customers, different meter sizes. In one case is 2 inch and the other is 6 inch. Both of them have pretty large area of impervious area. So for the option that we were having the tiers based on impervious area, they both fall in the upper tier. So that's option 4, and they're both going to pay $38.25. They both have 1 unit. So in option 1, they're going to pay the same $18 in that rate structure example, but they're going to pay different in option 2 and 3 because we're scaling the charge based on the meter size. So the 2 inch meter is going to pay $72 a month, and the 6 inch meter is going to pay $450. So again, some very different impacts for large industrial customers across the 4 different options. Commercial has quite a bit of variability as well in terms of relationship between meter size, units, and impervious area. So I've broken out commercial into commercial just regular, where it's all 1 unit, and commercial multifamily, which is going to be generally, as I said, hotel, motel, and some institutional and other miscellaneous customers. So you can see that for the regular commercial, everybody pays the same, $18 a month in option 1. Based on meter size, you get the whole range there from $9 up to $450 because the 6 inch meter there. And for the tiered option, you've got 2 of the customers that would fall in tier 2 and they would pay the $18. And then you have 2 customers that would fall in the upper tier and pay $38.25. Again, those tier differentials can be modified. That upper tier, that's the very largest tier, could be put at $50 a month or something else based on what your overall revenue recovery objectives and needs are. But it is interesting to note that from when you look at the differential in the rates, if you chose to do meter size, which is option 2, and the 2 inch meter would pay $72, and then the larger meter, the 6 inch meter, would pay $450. And then you look at the tiered option, and they both pay the same. So, it's there's lots of different ways to recover the revenue within the customer classes. And finally, for the commercial multi-unit, here, like with multifamily, a multi-unit in option 1 is going to pay significantly more than if it's based on meter size, because you can see in this example, a 31 unit hotel, which has 1.5 inch meter, is going to, that's on a per unit basis, that's $279 versus $45 for a 1.5 inch meter. So that gives you a sense as to some of the complexity, but also just some of the different impacts of choosing among these structures. We have attempted to provide a preliminary evaluation and score these options with respect to a number of different criteria, which you can see here on the left, which would include how the revenue is allocated across different types of customers in the system. So how much would residential pay, and that's residential single family versus multifamily customers, and then commercial industrial as a whole. And you can see that the meter size option actually would have residential paying the most, because you have relatively fewer large meters than if you go to a per unit basis, then that allocates more revenue to multifamily than compared to the meter size, as I mentioned. So multifamily would only pay 10% towards the fee, as opposed to 19, 20, 21% in these other options. Commercial, similarly, commercial would overall benefit from being the option one, just being charged on average a flat cost per unit. If you scale the commercial fees based on the meter size or based on the impervious area, then they're going to pay more, most significantly more if it's based on the meter size. So that gives you a sense. Option 3 would have residential paying the least amongst these options, and then balances that with increased revenue coming from multifamily and commercial industrial. As I mentioned, these percentages are impacted not only by how you assess the charges, but by the fee differentials. So these can be modified even within option 3 by simply making some different assumptions about the fee levels and how those are scaled. I think that, as I said, with scalability comes complexity. So as you move to the right of this table, you do get more complex, but you also have greater scalability, which generally speaks to greater equity and fairness. All of these options are used by some other jurisdictions, both within the 7 communities that we researched in detail, but also there are others across the state. I think there are 50 some different fees being charged, or probably more now. It keeps growing every year. But this has elements of both Salem, Corvallis, Newburgh approaches, this option 3. So just to summarize, these preliminary options, the overall revenue and allocations by class, as I said, may be modified, and by changes in fee levels that will change the overall revenue and those impacts, sample bill impacts. Our preliminary evaluation and opinion is that option 3, with some refinements, may best balance the objectives. And I say with some refinements because with respect to the multi-unit commercial customers, as you currently classify them, there are some customers in there that get put in the multi-unit class because they have 2 units. But they have a very large meter size, and so it's probably going to be most equitable to limit the unit-based approach within that class to those customers that really do have significant numbers of units, like 5 or more, and then to use the meter size approach like option 3 does for the other commercial industrial customers to scale those fees. That will require some more, these options were developed to be consistent within a current classification of customers. And so we just, if council would like us to pursue this option, then do that additional refinement and evaluation of the billing system data. Council policy decisions, again, which rate structure feels like it best balances your objectives, the overall revenue target and fee levels, and what specifically 25% low income discount or something greater or more or less. And then, as I mentioned, the planning process will continue to, there's still much to be done internally with respect to how you could then charge the fee, and then the outreach to the public. With that, concludes the presentation. Happy to answer questions.
Council, do you have any questions for Ms. Ghilardi?
I have a question.
Councilor Novak?
Yes, thank you. And I will just preface this by saying I have lived most of my adult life in apartments. So pardon me, but I have no idea how meter size is determined. Could you help me with that, please? How do I know how big a meter is on my home, or, you know, at my, we have a business. How does one determine meter size?
My understanding, it's and I'm not an engineer, I'm an economist, so
Mhm.
I would leave that to city public works folks. But it's my understanding
Yes.
that it is based. It's based on the estimated water use needs, which would include consideration of the number of units, but also other, water use requirements like irrigation and other common facilities that might be part of the structure. So, looking at beyond the units, the reason that single family residential tend to use less of the capacity of their meter than other types of customers, and that's why generally looking at a per unit versus a meter size basis is going to be more favorable to a multifamily, because they're going to, you want to serve somebody with the smallest meter that they can accurate or reliably be served with. And so that would mean looking to upsize only when needed.
Councilors, do you have any other questions? Councilor Smith?
I just wanted to clarify that this, any of these options would cover nonprofits and major facilities such as schools and hospitals and so on that don't pay property taxes to support city services, but they do use city water and sewer. Is that correct?
That's correct. There have been no assumed exemptions applied in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. That was one of my questions. Thank you. Did you have, councilors, any of us have anything else? I did have a couple questions myself. How much is this going to cost to implement? So cost to implement, what's the estimated timeline and cost of this type of fee? Peter, do you have something?
Yes, Mayor, I'll wait till your question is answered. I wanted to, well, I'll go ahead and say it. Let me just jump in and ask Deb Ghilardi to reemphasize the fact that the $9 base rate was chosen not arbitrarily, but because it was a median figure, a middle, an average figure. That in her model, you can change that $9 up or down And you can actually see when she does that, you can see how that affects the overall revenue. But there's nothing hard and fast about that base rate.
Okay, thank you for that. I was wondering cost of implementation, right? So how many staff hours, how many weeks to get it implemented, things like that.
Right. Deb, can you comment on that? I know that we talked about it. Once the council makes a decision about the rate structure, we then have another 6 weeks of work to do at least. But I'm not sure what goes beyond that.
Yeah, and I think Sean might have a better sense of that as well. I'll just speak to on the implementation cost side of things. I think that the cost would likely be greater than zero. How the city, I think, would need to make some decisions about how the cost of utility billing overall would be shared by the different services that you are billing on that utility statement. Whether it's just a flat, number of each fee, water, sewer, utility fee, pays a third, or whatever, or it's based on the revenue or some other metric. And so that would, greatly impact how much the utility fee would be responsible for. But yeah, I think in the implementation timeline, I think it's, yes, several weeks and potentially months, but Sean may have a better sense of that.
I see you, Dick. Councilor Olson had a question. Thank you very much, Deb. Councilor Olson.
Well, actually, I was scratching a little bit, but I do.
Sorry.
Do we have anybody here that is related to our engineering department that can tell us what kind of meter sizes are used for different size apartment buildings or that kind of thing? I would guess that meter size is based on how big a meter it takes to measure the amount of water that's used at an estimated maximum flow. But I guess we don't
Peter,
have
would
any
you like
other
me to?
Yeah, Chris Bailey is here and she'd be happy to answer that question, Councilor.
Happy. I'm
Yeah.
happy to answer that question. I'll start with my standard disclaimer that I'm not an engineer, but yeah, so meter size, I think, was pretty well explained. It depends on the calculated flow requirements of whatever customer is behind that meter. I do happen to have a handy list of our meters, large meters that are 3 inches and above, we classify as large meters. And so those include things such as elementary schools, moderate sized apartment complexes would be on a 3-inch meter. When you get up to like a hotel might be on a 3-inch meter. When you get up to middle schools or larger, more complicated facilities like a larger retirement community type facilities, those would be on larger meters, 4 inches and larger. And then it goes all the way up to our largest meter is a 10-inch meter, which is at LBCC. So it really does depend on what the use is going to be behind the meter, how many fixtures, and then also an allowance for fire flow demands for that system, which would come from the fire department. So it's not a easy answer, but as far as Councilor Novak's question about how to find out what size meter she has, we have all that in our utility billing database. So if you're curious, you can call utility billing or shoot them an email and they can tell you the size of your water meter at your business. And if you have a typical single family home, it would be a 3/4 inch meter. The only time we put larger meters on residential properties is if they also have like a large irrigation demand or perhaps a large shop or some sort of additional demand that would be more than a 3/4 inch meter could meet.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So duplex and triplex, they'd probably still be on a 3/4 inch, do you think?
I would say it probably would be on a 1 inch meter if they were jointly served. A lot of
Okay.
times those duplexes and quads will have individual water meters per unit. And so
Oh.
those would individually be on 3/4 inch meters.
So we would probably charge those customers. Now, they're not charged individually for garbage, are they? People in a fourplex, eh?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to
Okay.
guess. Deb might know more with working with Jenny about how we've handled them. I'm trying to remember how we handled them for stormwater, and I cannot remember.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Olson, Chris Bailey. Does anyone have anything else?
I raised my hand, but I lost it.
Yeah, I see it now. I see it now.
I mean, I really do have my hands. I've got a couple of things. First of all, I really would have appreciated having this information ahead of time so I could read it
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
base my questions on it. I mean, you went through, I couldn't see the right column because it was so big, you couldn't read it. And so it doesn't give us a fair advantage of like, okay, what do we want to ask? But I did notice, Deb, on the one where you were giving the rates and how much the different cities were, Newburgh's commercial was so high. It was on I think the way right, and I just wondered why was that way high?
I can go back to this table.
It's not showing right now.
No, and that's okay. It's just the
Oh,
one
okay.
where you spread out.
Well, so both Newburgh and Corvallis charge based on meter size. So in the case of Newburgh, the largest fee is going to be $820 per month, but they also have a much smaller residential fee of roughly $5 a month. And then Corvallis has a residential fee of $13 a month. So almost 3 times of Newburgh's base fee. And then their largest meter size is $2,300 a month. So it's because of the meters. Both of those charge based on the meter size. So it's going to be a range of fees depending on the meter size.
Okay.
Or are those the maximum meter size or what are they?
It's based on whatever the meter size that the customer has, but that's just the range. So if you have a 8-inch meter, you're going to pay, or a 10-inch meter, you're going to pay close to $800 if you're Newburgh, and over $2,300 if you're in Corvallis.
So that'd be a big industry or a monstrous hotels. Yeah.
Or institutional customer, correct.
Okay, and then my other question was, our statement is, if we do this, I mean, for one thing, I'm really surprised that it's kind of going forward like a given that it's going to happen, and that's kind of not what the council said before. So I'm just curious, but anyway, I would prefer to have the funds dedicated, like so much to fire, so much to police, and then something else. I don't want to have a broad brush to where it could go anywhere, because people aren't going to go for that. If they know what it's going to go for, it might be more digestible. Because first thing you say, fee, I mean, Lord knows I don't want any more fees either. But anyway, that's my concern, and I have others too, but at this point, I think I just won't say anything.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor Novak, you had something?
Yes, when it comes to commercial fees, we're talking, I saw some of them $2,000 a month, $1,800 a month. I'm thinking about my fellow restaurateurs and myself. I can tell you that because of COVID, if we were asking restaurants who do use water, because they have commercial dishwashers and we use a lot of water, I don't know what size. I'm going to call the utility billing to find out what size meter it is. But if we had to slap an extra $2,000 a month, I don't know what business in terms of if that's what a restaurant would be charged, you're going to completely finish the job on killing off restaurants. I think what COVID didn't destroy, this would.
Peter, go ahead, please.
Yes, I don't think under any of the options that Deb had, a restaurant would pay anywhere near $2,000. It was much, much less than that.
Okay, well,
and-
that may be my ignorance from not knowing the size of meters, but I'm looking, they said commercial, and I'm like, okay, a restaurant is commercial as opposed to a home or an apartment or a duplex.
Right.
So I just, it's a lack of knowledge on my part. So
No,
what
it's-
would, can anyone give me an idea of what a business like a restaurant would be asked to pay in terms of fees?
Well, and I'm looking at the slide that Deb had for commercial, and for a small meter, it was $9. So it was the same.
But
So,
does it,
What's that?
does it,
Go ahead.
my understanding after the presentation is that a commercial business is going to have a larger meter than a single family dwelling or an apartment complex. And maybe
I think it depends upon the size of the business, how big of a meter they have. But I would ask Chris Bailey. She has a comment to make here.
Okay.
Counselor Novak, I think your
Yes.
business meter is definitely in the 1 to 2 inch range. I'd be surprised if it's a 2-inch meter. Actually, it's probably a 1-inch meter. I hate to guess because you
That's
pretty
okay.
much
I'm gonna look
guarantee you're
into it.
wrong when you guess in public.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be, so that $1,800 cost would be a 10-inch meter. And we only have one of
Okay,
those.
thank you for that. Thank you for
So it
reiterating.
would be at the very low end of the commercial scale. And as we've said, the size depends on the use. So there are probably commercial entities that have 3/4 inch meters. I'm thinking of something like, a mailbox type business where they just have one domestic restroom and they wouldn't need a lot of water, something like that. It would scale all the way up depending on the number of fixtures you would have.
Okay, well,
Thank you, Councilor Novak. Peter Trotzen.
Yeah, and I just wanted to address a concern that Councilor Johnson had as well. From the very beginning, we have said that we're building a car for the council to put in the garage and use it when they had to. There's no obligation, even at this point, that this is going to be implemented. But you will need this tool at some day. And so in order for Deb and Sean and the rest of us to continue onward, we need to know what the council's preference is with respect to how this fee should be structured, because eventually it will be needed. And it actually is needed now if you don't want to lose services in the next biennium. And as far as, and Councilor Johnson also commit to getting this presentation to you as well, so you can have a chance to look at it if that's okay with Deb before Wednesday night, and we'll have a chance to discuss it some more.
Thank you, Peter.
I would appreciate that as well. Something like this could have been sent to us earlier today, so we could run through it and write down our questions. If there is any other comments from the council? Peter, do you have something for us today, other than this?
No, just the point that's the point of a work session is that the consultant can present the information and you'll have a chance to chew on it and think about it, and we can get you whatever amplifying information you might need, and then you can ask more questions on Wednesday.
So council, would you like to see this again on Wednesday? Consider which options for Wednesday?
Sure.
Council?
It's on the agenda to discuss again on Wednesday already.
Okay. So I guess we'll see each other on Wednesday night and discuss this a little further. Did you have something to add, Councilor Novak?
I have a for point of clarification, are we saying that we're obviously going to review this before Wednesday? Are we also saying that we're going to make a decision on Wednesday?
No, that's not what we're
Oh,
doing.
okay,
Well-
thank you. Thank you.
But what we would like you to do is to make a decision with respect to those 4 options. Which of those 4 options looks
Okay.
better to you? That's not a commitment to implementing the
right.
fee. But it is a guidance that you would give us to do further construction on this car.
Okay. That's the way I understood it as well. Go ahead, Counselor Johnson.
Yeah, I just, that made me think of it. Peter, what would, say, on the lowest one, it would generate 2.5 million. What would that do for, I know our budget is really,
Yeah,
you
well,
know, shy, but what would it do?
it's now 5:05, and I've
Okay.
got all that information for you for Wednesday night, so you can
All right.
have a context. Or
Okay.
we can go into it now, but I defer to the mayor.
We
And I
have,
want to point out that the very sharp city employees who are watching this tell me that Councilor Novak's meter is a 1-inch meter. So,
Oh, very good. All right, I think that's fine, Peter.
so we are actually running into a joint session after this. And so I would greatly appreciate if everyone would hold comment or at least reach out to staff with your questions for Wednesday night when you get the agenda. You should have it already. And at that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at, what time is it?
5:06.
It's
And we do
5:06.
have it's a different Zoom link to join the next
Yeah, we'll
meeting.
have a new link. So I'll see you on the, I will take a bio break and then come back to the next meeting. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
So can we just stay tuned?